Naval Base Coronado, 0700 hours. The sky was clear, cloudless, and wide as a promise. But the air on the parade ground was sharp enough to cut. Rows of SEAL candidates and active-duty operators stood in rigid formation under the Californian morning sun, boots aligned with military precision on hot asphalt. Clean-cut men in pressed uniforms, sweat beginning to bead at their temples. The national anthem had just finished echoing from the speakers. It was supposed to be a day of unity, ceremony, and pride. Instead, a storm was already gathering. At the center of it stood Lieutenant Commander Reina Torres, isolated. She wore her Navy uniform with textbook precision. Creased fatigues, polished boots, ribbons aligned perfectly, and a single silver seal trident pinned above her heart. But it was that trident, the revered insignia that marked someone as one of the most elite fighters on Earth, that had turned the air around her hostile. All eyes were on her, most of them filled with suspicion, a few with open disdain. Then came the voice, low, sharp, unmistakably angry. "That's enough. I'm not standing here while she insults every man who's died to earn that pin." The formation stirred. The speaker stepped out from the line, his boots echoing like gunshots on the pavement. Commander Seth Hale, broad-shouldered, red-faced, the embodiment of old-school SEAL culture. A bronze star gleamed on his chest, but right now he looked like he'd throw it at someone's head. He pointed at Reina. "She's not one of us. I don't care what ranks on her file. I don't care what some goddamn stamp says. She didn't go through BUD/S. She didn't suffer through Hell Week. And she sure as hell didn't stand shoulder to shoulder with us in the fight." Murmurs, shuffling. No one spoke out loud, but the message had already poisoned the air. "She's a fake. A liar in a uniform." Reina didn't react. She stood at attention, eyes forward, unblinking. Hale took another step forward, invading the bubble of quiet around her. "I've buried brothers. Watched men bleed out on rocks and sand in places Washington won't even name. You think I'm going to stand here while she wears a trident like it's a goddamn accessory?" Someone in the back snorted. "Maybe she bought it on Etsy." A wave of cruel laughter rippled through the ranks. Still, Reina didn't move. The base's XO, Commander Denton, stepped toward the confrontation, a clipboard clutched under one arm. "Commander Hale, this isn't the time or place." "It's exactly the time," Hale shot back. "We're swearing in our new operators today, and they're supposed to look up to that." He pointed again, jabbing the air like he wanted to stab her with it. "She's standing there like some war ghost. No record of training. No teams listed under her service jacket, and you're telling me to be quiet?" His voice rose. "No. This is my house, and I won't let her disgrace it." Reina's jaw flexed. Denton turned to her. "Lieutenant Commander Torres, do you have a response?" A long silence. Then Reina's voice came. Clear, firm, soft but unshakable. "No, sir." Hale's face flushed a deeper red. "Of course not. Because lies fall apart under fire." He stepped even closer, inches away now. "Take it off." Reina didn't answer. "I said take it off." He reached forward. Gasps all around. A few SEALs visibly flinched. But Reina's hand moved like lightning. She grabbed Hale's wrist midair, her fingers digging into the thick muscle just hard enough to hold him. Just enough to remind him she was stronger than she looked. She didn't twist, didn't shove. Just held him there, calmly. Her eyes finally met his. "If you touch my uniform again, Commander," she said quietly, "you'll be explaining it to a JAG officer. From a hospital bed." Dead silence. For a second, Hale froze. The raw fury on his face started to slip, replaced with something colder, uglier. Fear. Then she let go. He stumbled back one step, rubbing his wrist. "You threatening me?" he barked. "I'm warning you," she said. "Enough." Denton stepped in, hands raised. "This is done. Commander Hale, stand down." Hale sneered. "She's hiding something." Denton turned, voice like ice. "She's a lieutenant commander in the United States Navy, cleared to hold Trident status. Until an investigation says otherwise, that stands." Another voice chimed in, sarcastic, "Lazy." Wouldn't be the first time someone slept their way into a uniform. Reina turned her head, just slightly. Came from the back row. A blonde operator with a cocky smirk. Reyes. Her stare met his for a split second, and his smirk faltered. She returned to standing tall. Still, stoic, unshakable. Denton turned to her. Effective immediately, you are reassigned to provisional duties pending review. You will not participate in ceremony drills or mission readiness planning. Yes, sir, Reina said. You may remain on base. Yes, sir. Dismissed. She saluted, turned sharply, and walked. Past the staring seals. Past the jeering. Past the whispers. Each step was deliberate, controlled. Not a single emotion on her face. But inside the storm raged. In gear room, 0800 hours. Reina sat alone on a bench in the gear room, a heavy duffel beside her. Rows of lockers lined the walls. The muffled sound of laughter and movement echoed outside. She unzipped her bag and took out a worn photo. 3 men in dusty gear, faces smudged, arms slung over shoulders. All dead. She stared at it a long moment, then tucked it back. A knock. Lieutenant Elena Cross stepped inside. Clean uniform, curious eyes. I just watched that circus, Elena said. You okay? Reina didn't answer. They're wrong, you know, Elena said. They just don't know what to do with someone they can't categorize. Reina looked up. Don't waste your breath, she said. They've already decided what I am. What are you, then? Elena asked. Reina's eyes didn't waver. I'm the reason they're still alive, even if they never find out. She stood and walked out, her boots echoing behind her. XT. Outdoor track. Moments later, she stepped onto the track in her PT gear. The fog still hadn't lifted. No audience now. No shouting. Just her. She ran. Hard. Fast. The world a blur around her. She ran until her lungs burned, until her muscles screamed, until her mind went blank. Because pain was simple, unlike truth. If you are enjoying this story, please subscribe to support the channel. Naval Base. Administration Wing. 0930 hours. The sterile white hallway hummed with quiet tension. Lieutenant Elena Cross stood just outside the personnel records room, her knuckles white around the file folder she wasn't supposed to have. She took a breath, squared her shoulders, and entered. Commander Denton sat behind his desk, glasses perched low on his nose, eyes scanning a screen. He didn't look up. Sir, I'd like to reopen the inquiry on Lieutenant Commander Torres. Already under review, he muttered. Chain of commands handling it. I've been cross-referencing service records, Elena said, stepping forward. There are time gaps, discrepancies. Every deployment tied to her name ends in redacted operations. No after-action reports. No citation trails. Now Denton looked up. Exactly, he said flatly. Which is why she's under restriction. But what if the missing files aren't missing? Elena pressed. What if they were buried? He leaned back, arms folding. Lieutenant, this is the real Navy, not a spy novel. We don't make operators vanish into thin air. No, Elena said, stepping closer. But someone made her vanish. And I think she spent the last 10 years doing things you're not cleared to know about. Denton stared at her a long moment. Then quietly, walk away from this, Cross. Restricted duties, simulation room, 1,030 hours. Reina Torres stood alone on the sim mat, surrounded by a group of younger SEAL trainees. A monitor buzzed to life behind her, showing a hostage extraction scenario. The kind that operators drill 100 times, but never like this. The instructor, a broad-shouldered Master Chief named Grant, paced in front of the team. Torres here's gonna run you through a solo op, he said, voice cold. Might learn something. Or not. The sarcasm wasn't subtle. Reina didn't flinch. She turned to the trainees. No time for intros. The point of contact is being moved. Civilians on site. Intel is limited. You do it clean, or you don't come back. The trainees hesitated. Then one smirked. Are you reading off a script, ma'am? Grant laughed. Maybe she learned that in drama school. Snickers followed. Reyna simply walked forward, loaded the sim weapon, and triggered the sequence. 3 minutes later, the target was secured, 2 hostiles down, and the hostage exfiltrated with 0 crossfire. Her body moved with predatory grace, silent, surgical, efficient. When the scenario ended, she turned to the stunned group. "You talk like warriors," she said. "Move like recruits," and walked out. Barracks, midday. Reyna entered her temporary quarters. The walls were bare. Her bunk was made to regulation standard, the duffel tucked beneath it. But something was off. Her locker. She approached it slowly. The lock was still shut, but the air smelled wrong. Too clean, like bleach and plastic. She opened the door. Inside, her PT gear, boots, folded fatigues, and on top, a photo, printed in color. It was her, doctored. A low-quality image of Reyna wearing a cocktail dress and heels, holding a toy rifle with sparkles edited on top. The words "Seal Barbie" were stamped across it in glittery font. She stared at it for a long time, didn't move, didn't breathe. Then she folded the image in half. Once, twice, again, and tucked it into her pocket. Base mess hall, 1,400 hours. The room buzzed with noise and trays clattering. Reyna entered, eyes ahead, moving with purpose. As she passed, conversations dipped, then restarted. Quieter, meaner. She sat alone at the end of a long table. 2 seats down, a group of operators laughed too loud. "She probably thinks a flashbang is a new beauty product." One of them muttered. "Careful," another replied. "She might write you up for sexism." "Write me up," the first one laughed. "She doesn't even belong here." Reyna kept eating. Each chew was deliberate. She didn't flinch. But Elena, sitting at the far end of the same table, noticed. File archives, that evening. Elena stood alone in the secure file room, under dim blue lighting. A classified terminal blinked to life before her. She searched the Naval Operations database, digging past typical directories. Then further. Deep access. Red lines. Warning prompts. She bypassed 2 clearance blocks she wasn't cleared for. Then she saw it. Echo 9. Operational records. Access denied. Permission required. Admiral level clearance. She stared at the code. Echo 9. No roster. No missions. Just a black box with the words. Deniable operations. Operator status. Redacted. And next to that, a ghost entry. No name. Just a date range. 10 years of silence. Elena whispered, "Oh my God." She wasn't missing. She was hidden. Gym night. The gym was quiet, lit by a row of humming fluorescents overhead. Reyna stood at the far end, hands wrapped, fists flying at the bag. Thud, 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 each strike louder than the last. She didn't grunt, didn't shout, just hit, clean, brutal, mechanical. From the doorway, Elena watched. "You break that bag and they'll make you pay for it," she said gently. Reyna didn't turn. Elena stepped inside. "I found your file, or what's left of it. You were Echo 9, weren't you?" Silence. "They erased everything," Elena said. "Even your BUD/S training. No logs, no reports. Just a void where a life used to be." Reyna kept striking the bag. Her voice came low, ragged. "That was the deal." Elena stepped closer. "You let them erase you?" "I survived," Reyna said. "That's more than most of them." She finally stopped. Sweat trickled down her neck. Her hands trembled, not from exertion, but from restraint. "They sent us to places that don't exist. We did things no one wants to admit happened. And when we got back, we were told to disappear. No reunions, no medals, no names on any walls." Elena hesitated. "But why stay silent now?" Reyna looked over at her, eyes hollow. "Because I gave my silence to men who didn't come home. And if I speak now, I betray their sacrifice." Docks. Later that night, the sea whispered against the shore. Reyna sat at the edge of the dock, legs hanging over, her uniform jacket folded beside her. She rolled up her sleeve and looked at the tattoo inked on her arm. A serpent wrapped around a trident. Faint, faded, real. The mark of Echo 9. Her fingers grazed the edge of the ink, tracing it like a memory she could barely hold. Somewhere, on another continent, in another war, the rest of the unit's marks had gone cold in the dirt. Only hers still pulsed. Only hers still remained. Back in the barracks. That night, when Reyna returned to her bunk, she found another note tucked into her locker. No threats. No pictures. Just 4 words, handwritten on a torn scrap. You don't belong here. She stared at the paper, then reached beneath her mattress and pulled out a small metal tin. Inside 3 dog tags. She held them gently in her hands and whispered the names etched into them. One at a time. She didn't cry. She never cried. But her grip tightened, like she was holding onto the last threads of something already unraveling. Naval Base, Combat Gym, 0500 hours. Sweat glistened on the concrete floor. The scent of steel and chalk hung thick in the air. The gym was usually quiet this early, meant for the few who were hungry enough to train before sunrise. But today, 3 operators lingered near the sparring mat, their voices low and smug. Reyna Torres was stretching in silence near the free weights. Hey, Barbie, one of them called, voice oily. You ever spar? Or just shadowbox for Instagram? She didn't look up. The man, Jordan, thick-necked and cocky, stood and rolled his shoulders. I'm just saying, if you're gonna wear the trident, you might want to show you can throw a punch without chipping a nail. Laughter followed. Not much, but enough. Reyna rose. Slow. Controlled. She walked to the mat, pulling the Velcro tight on her wraps. 3 minutes, she said. Try not to cry. That got their attention. Jordan smirked. You sure you want this? Reyna stepped onto the mat. I've already had worse. Round 1, sparring. They circled. Jordan bounced, grinning, hands loose. Reyna stood still, feet planted, eyes locked. The first move came from him, a jab, casual testing. Reyna didn't move. He tried again, left hook. She slipped it, stepped inside, and crack, drove her elbow into his ribs. Jordan collapsed with a strangled gasp. The gym went dead silent. He rolled over, clutching his side, coughing hard. Broken rib. One of the others muttered in disbelief. Reyna adjusted her stance. Still wanna go? The second man shook his head. Nope. Reyna stepped off the mat without a word, heading back toward the bench. She didn't smile. She didn't look proud. She just looked used to it. Elena's office, 0700 hours. Elena stared at her screen. The access logs were blinking. Her fingers hovered over the keys, uncertain. Then she typed, Echo 9, archive request. Access denied. Restricted to SecNav override. Authorized personnel, Admiral J. Reeve. She leaned back. Reeve. The name had popped up twice now in Reyna's sealed transfer record, and again in a redacted memo tied to Tier 0 operations. Elena stood and grabbed her coat. She needed answers. Soon. Flashback. Yemen. 3 years ago. Night. The moon hung like a blade over the ridge. Gunfire rattled in the valley below as Reyna crouched in a crumbling watchtower. Radio pressed to her ear. Echo 9, this is Ghost Actual. 2 minutes to exfil. Where the hell are you? No answer. Blood dripped from her temple. Her rifle was empty. Her hands shook, but not from fear. 3 silhouettes lay dead at her feet. Enemies. Beyond the tree line, her team was gone. She could hear their last moments on loop in her head. We hold them here. You get the target out. And she had. But they didn't follow. Back to present. Infirmary. 0900 hours. Jordan lay on a gurney, breathing shallow. A medic wrapped his chest while the others hovered nearby, clearly rattled. She dropped him in one hit. One muttered. That's not normal. She's not normal, said the other. She's something else. Something wrong. She's dangerous. Command briefing room, 1000 hours. Elena stood in front of Commander Denton, pointing at the printed file. There's a file in Naval Intelligence signed by Admiral Reeve, linked to Echo 9 operations. Every field report is redacted. But one name repeats in internal comms logs. Torres. Denton shook his head. You're grasping at ghosts. She's not a ghost. She's alive. She's here. And she's walking around your base while being treated like a fraud. Denton exhaled. You want to know what I think, Lieutenant? I think she's exactly who she says she is. Then why not defend her? Elena asked. Because no one wants to admit we forgot her. Gear locker, 1,100 hours. Reyna opened her locker and paused. Inside, her personal gear had been tampered with again. But this time something had been added. A laminated photo. Black and white. Old. A picture of a gravestone with the words, "No name. No honor." She took it out slowly, stared at it, then reached into her duffel and pulled out a worn patch. Tattered, dirt-stained. A hydra wrapped around a trident. Faded black thread on olive canvas. She ran her thumb over it once, then slid the patch into her pocket and closed the locker. Dining hall, 1,200 hours. The room was loud, but when Reyna walked in, conversation dipped. She took a seat in the far corner. Tray, utensils, water, protein bar. She didn't eat. Across the room, a group of SEALs sat clustered. One of them, Reyes, watched her from behind his cup. I don't get it, he muttered. She doesn't talk, doesn't explain, just walks around like she's owed respect. One of the others said, maybe she's here to spy on us. Or replace us. Reyes lowered his cup. She's not one of us. Behind them, someone replied softly, maybe you're not one of her. They turned. It was Elena holding a tray, glaring. Training field. Afternoon. Reyna stood under the sun with the newest group of recruits, leading them through close combat drills. One of them, a tall, wiry kid, hesitated on a maneuver. Move like your life depends on it, Reyna said. Because one day it will. He tried again. Sloppy. Reyna took him to the ground in a heartbeat. Too slow. She helped him up. Gently. The others watched in awe. Interrogation room. Later that night. Reyna sat at the cold steel table again. Elena stood behind the glass, arms crossed. Denton walked in. Dropped a folder. We're escalating the inquiry, he said. Admiral Reeves arriving tomorrow. Reyna blinked. Why? He's requesting a direct meeting. Silence. Do you know him? Reyna stared at the table. I buried his secrets, she said softly, then added. And one of them clawed its way back up. Late night, barracks. Reyna lay on her bunk, arms behind her head, staring at the ceiling. In the quiet, the voices from her past returned. Gunfire, screams, dust, names whispered in the dark, orders given and followed. She reached under her mattress again and pulled out the 3 dog tags. This time she held them longer. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, she remembered what it felt like to be human. Naval Base, Flight Deck, 0800 hours. The Black Hawk touched down in a dust storm of grit and rotor wash, its dark frame sleek and silent as it hovered a foot above the tarmac. When it landed, the rotors still whipped the wind in angry spirals. A group of officers stood waiting near the perimeter. Backs stiff, expressions sharp, shoes polished within an inch of their lives. All except one. Lieutenant Commander Reyna Torres stood a little further back from the group, arms behind her back, eyes shadowed by her cover. She had been ordered to escort a guest. Nothing more. No rank, no salute protocol. Just stand there and be quiet. The moment the door slid open, the energy on the flight deck shifted. Admiral Jonas Reeves stepped out in full dress uniform, unaccompanied. His reputation preceded him like a war chant. Black Ops coordinator, career warfighter, and the man whose decisions shaped a dozen unseen battlefields. But it wasn't his medals that drew attention. It was the way his eyes landed directly on Reyna the moment he stepped onto solid ground. He froze. A gust of wind passed between them. The other officers didn't notice it, but to Reyna, It felt like the past had finally arrived to collect its due. Their eyes locked. He hadn't seen her in years. He wasn't sure he ever would again. Base headquarters, corridor 0845 hours. Footsteps echoed as Reeve walked beside Reyna in silence. The two were alone, his aide intentionally dismissed, his path carefully chosen. He said nothing for several seconds as they passed framed portraits of former SEAL commanders and plaques honoring fallen heroes. Eventually, he spoke. "Your name wasn't supposed to surface." Reyna didn't respond. "I signed the paperwork myself," Reeve said. 2 inches of red tape. "You were ghosted. That was the deal." "It wasn't a deal," Reyna replied, voice flat. "It was a burial." He turned his head slightly. "You disobeyed orders. You came back when you should have disappeared. I came back because no one else did." That silenced him. They stopped at a locked door marked SCIF, secure room, authorized only. Without asking, Reeve placed his palm on the biometric reader. The door clicked open. In secure room 0900 hours. Lights flickered overhead. The room was cold, bare. Steel table. 1 chair each. No windows. No microphones. Reeve set his briefcase on the table, unlocked it, and pulled out a file thicker than any Reyna had seen in years. Red labeled. Top clearance. Her name stamped across the front. He opened it. Inside, mission logs, photos, DNA records, fractured communications, and surveillance stills that no longer existed in official Navy archives. "You were never supposed to be seen again," he said. "You knew that." Reyna's eyes dropped to a photo in the folder. Operation Scythe, 2019. A body in flames. A woman walking away from it. "She was one of ours," Reeve said. "Until the mission went black." "Echo 9 didn't fail," Reyna replied. "You just didn't want to own it. You went off mission. We saved 20 civilians. We neutralized 5 targets. We lost 3 men, yes, but we stopped a mass strike." "You went off mission," Reeve repeated. They stared at each other. Something cracked between them, years of silence, of buried choices. "I saw what they did to you," Reeve said. "I read the reports. The SEALs here, they think they know what violence looks like. They think they understand sacrifice." He leaned in. "But you lived in it. And you came back anyway." Reyna unzipped the collar of her uniform just slightly and turned her shoulder. There, faded but sharp in the room's light, a hydra wrapped around a trident, inked into the back of her shoulder in black ink. Reeve stared. "That tattoo was burned off most of the others," he said quietly. "Only 3 ever wore it. Only one of us came back alive," she answered. He looked at her, really looked. "You were Echo 9. I am Echo 9. Reeve sat back. "Well," he murmured, "that changes everything." In observation room, same time. Behind a one-way mirror, Elena and Commander Denton watched the exchange. Neither spoke. Finally, Denton let out a long, slow breath. "Goddamn." Elena turned toward him. "Still think she's a fraud?" Denton shook his head. "I think we've been standing in the presence of something the Pentagon tried to forget." In secure room, later. Reeve closed the file and locked it back inside the briefcase. "I'll clear your record. Officially. Get you reinstated. Quietly. You'll have your trident, your rank, your record." "I don't want any of that," Reyna said. He raised an eyebrow. "Then what do you want?" She looked up at him, eyes hard. "A name on the wall for the ones who didn't come back. A record of the men you buried without ceremony. And a damn answer for why we were discarded like trash." Reeve leaned forward, voice lower. "You start talking about Echo 9 in public, Reyna, and you'll be opening up every covert door we ever sealed shut. Do you understand what you're asking?" "I'm not asking," she said. "I'm stating a fact. Either I speak or I walk. And if I walk, every reporter on the West Coast will know exactly who I am by tomorrow morning." Reeve didn't blink, didn't move. Then slowly, a smile twitched at the corner of his mouth. Still disobedient as hell. Still alive. He stood. "I'll call for a closed tribunal. You'll have your hearing. No more whispers. They'll hear the truth from your mouth." Not for me, Reyna said. No, he agreed. For them. In barracks, that evening, Reyna returned to her quarters. The note that had once read, "You don't belong here," was gone. In its place, a single item laid out carefully on her pillow. A seal trident pin. Not new. Not polished. Used. Scuffed. Real. She stared at it for a long time, then sat down, and began to sew the Echo 9 patch into the inside lining of her collar. One stitch at a time. In Admiral's private office, night. Reeves stood alone, staring at the wall of sealed ops. He poured himself a glass of whiskey. The room was silent. Behind him, his aide appeared. "Sir, should I file the clearance request?" Reeve nodded. "Do it." The aide hesitated. "Sir, if she speaks, she'll expose a dozen illegal ops. You could be dragged in." Reeve turned slowly. "She's earned the right to speak. And the rest of us," he sipped the whiskey, "will finally have to listen." XT. Training field, midnight. Under the stars, Reyna walked the perimeter track alone. The base was quiet now. Only the sound of wind and distant waves. She paused at the flagpole, looked up. Her hand found the edge of her collar, tugging it slightly, exposing the tattoo again to the cold night air. She didn't flinch. Let them see it now. Let them know. Tomorrow everything would change. But tonight, she finally breathed. Naval Base. Tribunal Room. 0700 hours. The tribunal chamber wasn't large, but today it felt cavernous. 3 flags hung behind the raised panel. The U.S. flag, the Navy ensign, and the SEAL Team's banner. Beneath them sat 3 senior officers in full dress, faces stone-carved and weathered with command. The room was arranged like a courtroom. Rows of uniformed personnel behind, hushed and tense. The air buzzed, not with noise, but with heat. The kind that came when everyone in the room knew something bigger than a disciplinary hearing was about to happen. Commander Denton stood by the wall, arms folded. Lieutenant Elena Cross sat beside him, eyes forward. Several SEALs, including Jordan, Reyes, and even Hale, filled the rows, each silent, each pretending they weren't waiting for a shoe to drop. Then the door opened, and Reyna Torres entered. She wore her full uniform, pressed, sharp, not a crease out of place. The silver trident still rested over her chest, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. She did not smile. She did not blink. She walked with the poise of someone walking into enemy territory. Behind her followed Admiral Jonas Reeve, black case in hand. No one spoke, not a breath. The senior tribunal officer, a gray-haired vice admiral with a voice like gravel, banged the gavel once. "This hearing has been convened to address the contested status of Lieutenant Commander Reyna Torres as a qualified member of the United States Navy SEALs." He looked at Reyna. "Lieutenant Commander, do you acknowledge these proceedings?" "I do," Reyna said, her voice clear. "You are permitted a statement of defense." She didn't step forward. She didn't need to. "I am a SEAL," she said simply. "I earned the trident on my chest. What I did, I cannot prove. What I survived, no one will confirm. But I stand here because I was sent where no one else would go, to do what no one else was willing to do. And I came back. That's my proof." The room remained silent. Some looked down. Others just stared. Reeve stepped forward. "If I may speak, Admiral?" "You may," the lead officer said. Admiral Reeve's testimony. Reeve placed the black case on the table. The room dimmed slightly as he turned on the embedded screen, revealing a redacted field document with a faded operation title. Echo 9, Tier 0 status, Operation Black Sky. He began. Echo 9 was a SEAL unit constructed under ultra-covert directives, off the books without formal registry. Their purpose was simple: to accomplish missions too politically volatile or dangerous for attribution. Missions that required deniability. He turned to the room. "You've never heard of Echo 9 because you weren't supposed to. Their operators were never acknowledged. Their actions never recorded. The condition of service was complete erasure. No medals, no commendations, no name on the wall. He clicked the screen again. A black and white surveillance photo flickered into view, grainy, but unmistakable. Reyna, in tactical gear, walking through smoke and blood. Alone, carrying a wounded operative on her back. She led that team for 5 years, Reeve said. Survived 6 countries. Completed missions that changed the course of wars. The body count she prevented will never be tallied. And when her team was compromised in Yemen, she returned alone. With no backup, no exfil. She carried the operation to success, and buried 3 men to do it. A beat. She came home, and we asked her to disappear. Reyna's turn. Reeve stepped back. The tribunal officer nodded to Reyna. She walked to the center of the room, then reached into her pocket. 3 dog tags clinked together as she held them in her hand. Bent, scratched, scorched by fire and time. She placed them gently on the table before the officers. Petty Officer First Class Miguel Cruz. Chief Mark Wells. Lieutenant Aaron Kwan. My team, she said. They died to get us out. And no one remembers them. No records. No ceremony. No folded flag handed to their families. Just silence. She unbuttoned the top of her collar and pulled her jacket slightly aside. The room gasped. On her shoulder blade, exposed fully now in the light, a hydra twisted around a black trident, inked deep in her skin. The symbol of Echo 9. They branded us, she said, so we'd never forget who we were, or what we weren't allowed to become. Her voice trembled, not with weakness, but with something stronger. I didn't come here to reclaim my trident. I came here to reclaim their names. Reaction. For a long time, no one said anything. Commander Hale, seated off to the side, looked stunned. His usual steel-willed posture slackened into something unsure. He stared at the dog tags like they were ghosts. Reyes leaned forward in his seat, blinking fast, as if seeing her for the first time. Even Jordan shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of how small he felt in his chair. One of the tribunal officers, visibly moved, cleared his throat. Admiral Reeve, will require documentation to verify the unit's status. You'll have it by noon, Reeve said. Declassified under SEC Nav order. And the accusations against Lieutenant Commander Torres will be dropped, the senior officer said. Effective immediately. He looked at Reyna. Lieutenant Commander, you are hereby reinstated. Your record will reflect your service under Echo 9. Classified details will be sealed under Level 4 clearance. But your identity as a SEAL is no longer in question. Reyna nodded once. Thank you, sir. After the hearing, outside, Reyna stepped into the sunlight. The fresh air hit her like a tide she didn't know she'd been drowning under. A crowd had gathered, some SEALs, some junior officers, some just curious. They watched as she walked past, unsure whether to salute, to speak, or to look away. She didn't stop, until a voice called out behind her. Lieutenant Commander. It was Commander Hale. She turned. He stood still, jaw clenched, eyes holding more regret than pride. I was wrong, he said. The silence between them felt like a canyon. I saw weakness where there was none. I disrespected something I didn't understand. Reyna didn't move, didn't blink. I didn't do it for your apology, she said. I know, he replied, but I had to give it. He stepped forward, removed the trident from his own uniform, and held it out to her. You don't need another, but this one's not for you. She looked down at it, then took it. I'll give it to someone who earns it. Elena, later. Elena met her by the memorial wall. She stood in silence as Reyna added something beneath a brass plaque. Nothing official. Just a slip of paper, weighted with a small stone. 3 names. And a 4th line. Never forgotten. Never erased. They'd be proud, Elena said. They wouldn't believe any of this, Reyna answered. They'd believe you, Elena said. You brought them back, even if only by name. Reyna looked out toward the ocean. For the first time in years, the world felt lighter, not healed, but seen. Naval Base, Auditorium, 0800 hours. They called it a debrief, but everyone knew better. The base auditorium, usually reserved for promotion ceremonies or command presentations, was now packed to the walls. Rows of chairs were filled with Navy personnel, from junior officers to seasoned SEALs. The buzz of whispers was thick in the air, a low hum of embarrassment, curiosity, and guilt. They weren't just here to hear a report. They were here because they had seen a ghost bleed. And now they didn't know where to look. At the front of the room stood Admiral Jonas Reeve, arms clasped behind his back, face as unreadable as stone. A projection screen glowed faintly behind him, displaying one image, the Hydra and Trident insignia of Echo 9. Beside him stood Reina Torres, uniform crisp, boots planted, and for once, not silent. When she looked out at the audience, there was no smugness in her face, no vengeance, only the look of someone who had come out the other side of hell and remembered every step. Reeve addresses the room. Admiral Reeve's voice rang out like a blade across steel. You have all heard the rumors. You've whispered your doubts. You laughed when a decorated SEAL stood among you and said nothing. He paused. Let the silence cut. You made assumptions. You mocked what you didn't understand. And in doing so, you dishonored not only her, but the men who died in silence beside her. A few in the crowd shifted uncomfortably, averted their gaze. Reeve turned to Reina. She has the floor. Reina steps forward. Reina moved slowly to the podium. The screen behind her flicked to black. Her voice was calm, clear, its edge sharp not from anger, but from truth long held too tightly. I'm not here for a speech, she began. And I'm not here for closure. Closure implies something is over. But some wounds don't close. Some names stay classified. Some sacrifices are never honored. She paused. I stood in this uniform while some of you laughed. I let it happen. Not because I couldn't fight back, but because I had already spent years fighting. I was tired. She reached into her jacket and placed something on the podium. 3 battered dog tags. My team was made up of ghosts. Men who didn't get funerals. Men whose families were told they were MIA because our missions were too dirty for daylight. She looked at the front row, where several senior SEALs sat frozen. You want to talk about valor? Try watching your best friend bleed out in silence, knowing the government would pretend he never existed. Try sending coordinates for an exfil that never came. Try surviving, and being told that your survival was the problem. The room was silent, stone dead. Commander Hale rises. From his seat in the second row, Commander Hale stood. His face was pale, unreadable. The man who had once tried to rip her trident off in front of a crowd now struggled to meet her eyes. Lieutenant Commander, he said, voice rough. I can't undo what I said, or how I judged you. No, Reina replied. You can't. Hale swallowed. But I can acknowledge it, and I can change what happens next. He looked around the room. So can all of you. The revelation. Admiral Reeve stepped forward again. There will be no punishment handed down today. No reprimand. Because Lieutenant Commander Torres asked that no one be formally charged for harassment or defamation. Several officers blinked in confusion. Reeve continued. She asked for something else instead. That this base implement a mandatory operational debrief series based on the Echo 9 protocol. He gestured to the screen. Training on what it means to lead with restraint. How to serve beside those whose scars you don't see. How to recognize that silence doesn't mean weakness. He looked back at Reina. She didn't come to punish. She came to teach. Post-debrief outside. The sun hit the courtyard like a slow thaw. Reina stood alone by the stone benches, breathing in the salt breeze. Her hands were in her pockets. No officers crowded her. No photographers. Just the wide space of a world that was finally learning how to carry her name. Elena approached carrying a coffee. That was brave, she said. No, Reina replied. It was overdue. They sat. You know what the most painful part was? Reina asked after a beat. Elena shook her head. It wasn't the accusations, or the silence. It was watching people I would have died for assume I didn't belong. Elena looked away. Some of them still don't understand, she said. I don't need them to. Reyna replied. I just need to make sure the next one like me doesn't go through it alone. Training field. The next day, 0600 hours. Reyna stood on the edge of the training course. Before her were 15 new SEAL candidates, soaked in sweat, chests heaving from a dawn run. She stepped forward. Every one of you wants to prove something, she said. But most of you don't know what that is yet. She held up her hand, revealing a folded piece of fabric. A new Echo 9 patch, officially reproved as a legacy symbol, but now adopted into an underground mentoring program for unacknowledged veterans. You don't earn this by being loud, she said. You earn it by surviving without being seen, and still doing the right thing. She handed it to the lead trainee. You'll know when to wear it. Office of the Base Commander. Later that week. Denton sat behind his desk, flipping through the latest security report. His jaw was tight. He didn't look up when Reyna walked in. I owe you, he said without preamble. No, Reyna replied. You owe them. Just don't forget that next time. He looked up. You're not staying, are you? I never planned to, she said. Where will you go? Wherever they send me next. Late night, the seawall. Reyna stood alone on the seawall that bordered the base, waves crashing quietly below. She had her jacket off, sleeves rolled, the ocean wind brushing across her tattoo. Behind her, footsteps. Admiral Reeve stopped beside her. Echo 9 was never supposed to last. It didn't, Reyna said. He handed her a sealed envelope. Inside are the names of 4 people who pushed for Echo 9's silence. You'll never hear them apologize. But their names deserve to be known. Reyna didn't take it. I don't need names, she said. Just change. Reeve nodded. You've already started it. Naval Base. Training Field. 0600 hours. The fog rolled low across the obstacle course, draping the metal structures and ropes in an eerie white silence. Reyna Torres stood at the edge of the mud-slicked field, arms crossed over a dark fleece jacket, hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun. Her boots were planted on solid ground, the sunrise at her back, casting her shadow long over the ground. In front of her, 15 recruits, new SEAL candidates, stood with heaving chests and mud-caked faces, their uniforms soaked from the morning's punishment. One of them, Reyes, was already bleeding from the elbow. Another had vomit drying on his sleeve. They all looked at her like she was the executioner. Reyna took a breath, slow and steady. You're not tired, she said. No one answered. She stepped forward. Her tone sharpened. You think this is pain? Try burying a teammate with no flag. Try sitting in silence while people mock your dead brothers because they never existed on record. Try waking up knowing you're the last proof a mission even happened. Still no one spoke. Reyna leaned down beside one of the slower runners, her voice a blade. If your ego can't take discipline, it won't survive failure. The man gritted his teeth and kept crawling. Good. Naval gym. Later that morning. The gym buzzed with low music and the clank of weights. Reyna stood at a heavy bag, not hitting, just watching a pair of junior officers sparring. Their technique was good. Sloppy under fatigue, but good. As one of them dropped his guard and took a clean shot to the jaw, Reyna raised an eyebrow. You flinch like someone who's never been hit in anger, she called. The two stopped, both turning to see her approaching. Permission to reset? One of them asked. She nodded. After you answer one question. They waited. What's the difference between a warrior and a killer? Neither answered right away. Discipline? One guessed. Control, said the other. Reyna shook her head. No, it's remorse. A killer ends things. A warrior lives with the cost of what they protect. They stared, unsure if that was meant to humble or teach. Reyna turned back to the bag. Reset. Mess hall, 1,200 hours. The room had shifted. The last time Reyna walked in here, the air had been thick with side eyes and smirks. Now, still silence. But it was different. Respectful. Careful. She sat alone by choice, her tray half-finished. Several SEALs glanced her way, but quickly returned to their food. Then Reyes stepped out from the line and walked directly over, tray in hand. He stood in front of her table, awkward for a beat. "I was one of the loud ones," he said. Reina looked up. "I know. I thought you were just another ghost story in a patch." She didn't answer. "I was wrong," he said. "About everything." "You were ignorant," she replied. "Not evil. Know the difference." He nodded and sat across from her. After a long silence, he asked, "Why come back?" Reina chewed once, swallowed, then said, "Because if I didn't, no one would know we existed." Command Building 1,400 hours. Reina entered the command suite with Admiral Reeve already waiting. A wall of screens behind him displayed a new proposal in clean military font. Project Sentinel, Shadow Mentorship Program for Tear-Suppressed Veterans. Reeve gestured to the empty chair. "Your idea. Your name goes on it." "No," Reina replied. "It's not about my name. It's about the ones who never got one." Reeve nodded slowly. "The patch." Reina pulled it from her jacket pocket, black cloth, stitched in silver-gray thread. A hydra wrapped around a broken trident, head raised, scarred but alive. "We won't issue it," she said. "It won't be earned by running laps or doing push-ups." "How then?" "When someone survives something no one believes in, and still chooses to serve." He gave her a long look. "You're building a legacy." "I'm building a warning," she said, "for the next girl they try to erase." Base Memorial Wall, sunset. Reina stood in front of the blank stone once more. The unofficial wall, where names weren't carved but remembered by the ones who knew. No fanfare, no color guard, just memories and silence. This time, someone had added 3 new tags, hung on hooks beneath the stone. Reina ran her hand across them. Wells, Cruz, Quan. She blinked, just once, then added a 4th. Torres R. Survived. Not for vanity, for record. Training room, night session. Reina stood before a whiteboard, drawing out close-quarters breach maneuvers for a group of off-duty SEALs and officers who'd requested extra instruction. Voluntarily, they listened, took notes, asked questions. One even raised a hand. "You're not what we expected." Reina paused. "Good." Another asked, "Why don't you go back to combat ops?" She met his eyes. "I still am," she said. "Just fighting different enemies now." Docks, midnight. The water slapped quietly against the wood pylons. Reina stood alone, holding a small, sealed envelope addressed to a name scratched out in the upper corner. Inside, a photo of her team, the only one in existence. She lit it on fire, watched it burn to ash in her palm, then released it to the wind. Let the past finally leave her fingers. Next morning, graduation ceremony prep. Elena found Reina pinning a folded Echo 9 patch into a shadow box meant for a trainee who'd just passed final phase. "You're giving it to him?" Elena asked. "No," Reina said. "He's not ready." "Then why make the box?" "To remind him it exists." She closed it gently. "He'll earn it. One day." Recruit's gear, later. Reyes returned to his locker and found something tucked into the top shelf. A small black patch, folded neatly. No note, no instruction, just the emblem of a serpent and a trident, stitched in silence. His hands trembled slightly as he ran his thumb over the threads. He looked up, and across the room saw Reina walking away, already gone. Naval Base, graduation ceremony, 0900 hours. The sun hung bright above the Navy parade field, bathing the entire base in golden light. Folding chairs stretched in perfect rows before the raised platform, where the newest graduating class of SEAL candidates stood in full dress blues, chins high, backs straight, medals gleaming. Their families filled the front rows. Proud faces, teary eyes, phones ready. But the real tension hovered around the edge of the ceremony, where a quiet crowd of instructors, officers, and decorated SEALs had gathered. Some had seen war. Others had survived things darker than paperwork allowed. They weren't here for the standard graduation speech. They were here because they'd heard whispers of what was about to happen. Back near the shade, far from the center aisle, Reina Torres stood in a simple dark suit. No uniform, no ribbons. Her trident pin was absent, left behind by choice. But every trainee knew who she was. They didn't need medals to recognize a legend. On stage, Elena speaks. Lieutenant Elena Cross stepped up to the podium. Her voice carried cleanly through the sound system. "We train warriors," she said. "We break them. We rebuild them. We teach them to run toward the things most people flee." She paused, letting her eyes sweep across the field. "But every so often, someone teaches us instead. Not with words, not with applause, but through silence, endurance, and action." She gestured behind her. "This year, our graduating class requested a special addition to the program." Murmurs from the crowd. "They've created a motto. One not listed in any handbook. One not approved by any department." She turned to the rows of graduates. "Elite doesn't mean loud. It means earned." The patch revealed. On cue, the class leader Reyes stepped forward. He pulled something from his dress uniform and held it high. A black embroidered patch. A serpent coiled around a broken trident, head raised in defiance. The Echo 9 symbol. A quiet wave rippled through the crowd. Seals stiffening, officers exchanging glances. And then, without a word, each graduate reached toward their inner sleeve or lapel, revealing the same patch stitched quietly inside their uniforms. Not regulation, not official, but earned. Reina, back of the crowd. Reina didn't move. She didn't smile. Her hands remained folded in front of her. But her jaw trembled, just once. Not because she'd planned it, not because she'd asked for it, because it meant they'd been listening. Because for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel like erasure. Felt like respect. After the ceremony, among the crowd, families surged forward to hug their sons and daughters. Cameras flashed. Officers shook hands. Reina slipped through the outer edge, unnoticed at first, until a young woman stopped her. "Ma'am," she said softly, "can I shake your hand?" Reina turned. The girl looked no older than 22. Blonde, clean uniform, eyes wide. "I heard what you did," the girl continued. "I just wanted to say thank you, for all of it, for surviving, for staying." Reina nodded and shook her hand. "I stayed," she said, "so you wouldn't have to do it alone." Echo 9 wall, new installation, 1,300 hours. They built it quietly. No speeches, no media, just a stone wall along the far side of the base. Low, angular, carved with one phrase, "For those who served where light never reached." Beneath it, in laser-etched steel, Echo 9, 3 names, Wells, Cruz, Quan. And then, below that, a blank space, left intentionally empty, for those whose names would never be spoken aloud, but always known. Reina ran her fingers along the stone. She pulled from her pocket a weathered trident pin, one she hadn't worn since the day they tried to take it. She placed it gently at the base of the wall, and walked away. Montana, 2 weeks later, remote cabin. Snow drifted quietly outside the wooden cabin tucked against the mountain base. Inside, a fire burned. A man sat in a battered armchair, beard thick, eyes scarred from years of things not written in any debriefing. Miguel Cruz, the one they'd thought dead. Reina stepped inside, boots crunching on old floorboards. No salute, no handshake, just a long, quiet look. And a nod. "You're late," he said. "You're alive," she replied. He smirked. "You didn't bury me deep enough." They sat, talked, laughed, and for the first time in years, Reina said the names of the dead out loud. One by one. No whisper, no code, just memory. Naval Base, night, training hall. Back at Coronado, Elena stood in front of a new training group. Fresh recruits. Blank slates. Behind her, the classroom door creaked open. Reina stepped in, dressed in civilian clothes. No insignia. She walked to the front of the room and set a single Echo 9 patch on the podium. "You don't know me," she said. "I don't need you to." She paused. "But someday you're going to hit a wall. You'll think you're broken. You'll feel alone. And if you're lucky, one of your teammates will tell you a story. She picked up the patch. A story about someone who didn't run, who didn't scream, who didn't quit. She looked up at them. And when they do, I want you to remember one thing. She flipped the patch in her hand. It wasn't courage that saved her. It was conviction. Docks, midnight. The sea was still. Moonlight shimmered across the dark water. The old dock creaked beneath Raina's boots as she stood at the edge, arms resting on the railing. She was alone, but not lonely. She looked out at the ocean, the place where it had all begun. The water where she'd been questioned, humiliated, challenged. She rolled up her sleeve. There it was, the tattoo. Black, faded, sharp as ever. A hydra coiled around a trident, its head facing forward. It didn't need to scream to be seen. Didn't need to prove itself. It just existed, just like her. They erased her name, so she carved it into others. Not with fire, not with fame, but with silence that could not be broken. If you liked this story, please subscribe to support this channel.